Let's take a look at how we can use some adjusting layers to modify different elements of an image. I'm going to be using these scenes that we captured this past summer from the ghost town of Bodie. The one on the left is a before shot. That's the original over here. And then on the right side, I used some adjusting layers to saturate the green and the blue. And I also used either an exposure or a brightness contrast feature to enhance the buildings in this middle section of the image. So here's before on the left and after on the right. And then there's a couple other ones here that I can show you too. Here we go. So on the left is before. This is a gold mining processing plant that was part of this Bodie gold town. And then here utilized an exposure mask, adjusting layer, and then masked out those parts of it that I didn't want affected. And then that was to increase the exposure here of these buildings, this dark spot, and the foreground. And then I used, looks like, hue and saturation here just to saturate the blues. So let's go ahead and open up a new picture from that Bodie collection. And so there's my background. So if you need to, pause the video, pick one of these out. And so what we'll do is we're going to create adjusting layers. These adjusting layers are real nice because they don't affect the original picture, which is really nice. Because if we make a mistake or we don't like it, well, we can just simply delete the adjusting layer and put a new one in. So the first step is to come on over down to the bottom here in this layers palette. And this tool right there, when you point to it, create new fill adjusting layer. And then you can pick what kind of adjusting layer you are interested in for this particular layer. And so I am going to choose, well, I'll do a real simple one for now, but you can experiment with a lot of these. I'm going to just go brightness and contrast. So I'm going to up the brightness. And then maybe some of that contrast. You can see that's too much, too little. I'll put it right there. Now the next step is that we can go into this mask that's been created with this adjusting layer. And right there, I click on that mask. I make sure that my foreground color is black, and then I can choose a brush. I'm going to go with a soft brush. I'm going to adjust the size of that brush, and I'm going to mask those areas that I don't want to be brighter. So I really wanted these to be brighter in here, these buildings and some of this foreground, but not necessarily the mountains and the sky. So everything's been affected. So what I can do is just come through here with this brush, and because I'm on a mask, now remember I'm on this layer, I'm not on the background. I'm not actually destroying pixels or modifying pixels on the original picture. We're just using a mask. So I can mask out. I'm going to go ahead and just for effect, I'll set this at 100%. And just, this is taking it back to what it was. So I'm going to mask out the sky. And maybe some of these mountains here don't need to be quite that bright. Just really want to highlight those buildings and the foreground somewhat. There we go. So I've masked that out. So now it's only affecting this layer here. I'll turn that off so you can see. Now you can tell it's darker, but this section here has been affected by this brightness contrast adjusting layer. And then I've used the masking to not affect the sky. The sky is still the original, so you don't see any change there because I masked it out. Very nice. Let's go ahead and put one more adjusting layer, and you can keep going with these, but I'm going to put one more in so that I can saturate the blue sky. So here's another layer. This time it's going to be hue and saturation. I'll come up to my selections here, and I'm going to choose blues. Right there. And saturation, I'm going to increase. Now, if you want, you can change the hue of those blues too, but I'm going to keep it right where it was at 0. But saturation, let's see if we can just add more depth to that color. There we go. That's a little too much. Right there. And then if you want, you could also do something with the greens here, just by selecting this channel selector here. I'll take the greens and I'll up the saturation of the greens somewhat. There we go. And then again, because I really only want to affect the sky and some of this green, but not the buildings, I'm going to click on the mask and my brush, and then I can mask those things that I don't want affected by that. Once again, I'll leave it at 100%. And so now I'm going to come through and mask out everything except the foreground green and the sky. And that should be pretty good. And if you want, you can spend more time. You could blend in. I could drop that opacity and then hit some of this foreground. Something like that. And then, if you want to see your work, you can go, okay, let's hide that layer and that layer. There's the original picture. Added brightness and contrast. Added some saturation. So the next step is to be able to show your before and after. And here's how you're going to do it. I'm going to deselect those. Here's our original. So I'm going to say, File, Save As, and give this a name. And so how about if I call this, it's image 2874 Bodie before. I'll put a designator A in case I do more than one image. Click OK, and then I can turn these channels back on, or these layers, and then name it after. File, Save As, Bodie after. And click OK. Alright, so there's the after, and I'm going to zoom out. Change that canvas size there. There's and then open up the one I saved called Bodie before. Right there. Move that over here. Zoom out. Reduce canvas size so we can see them side by side. There we go. And then call me over to take a look and show it to your friends and neighbors and see what they think and have them pick the one that they like best. So go ahead and try this with a few more images, and then you might also try to do this with some of our other pictures. See what you can do with soccer pictures, football, maybe those FFA state officers. Try these adjusting layers, and there's lots of different features or elements that you can adjust, and just experiment with that and with the masking and see what you come up with. It's a lot of fun. It's nice to be able to do this, and then like I said, if you make a mistake with any of these layers over here, you just simply take and delete it and just do it again, because you have not done anything to your original image. So not only saves time, but allows you to experiment really quickly with some nice features of Photoshop.